I hope you guys are excited because this class is going to be super fun, but also super funny. We are going to be talking about face-aware Liquify. There is so much new technology that's been implemented into the Liquify dialog box, which takes into account facial recognition software, both a primary and a backup facial recognition software that Adobe has created. And it allows you to really revolutionize the way you use Liquify. Okay, so just a little bit of background information about the tool. It was first implemented into Photoshop in CC 2015, and then it was updated in 2017. And it has come a very long way since even 2017 as well. Another cool thing about this technology is that it's both touch sensitive and slider responsive. So whether you are somebody who's a newer user of Photoshop and has experience on Photoshop Touch and things like that, where you're actually modifying the image by touching certain points on the specific image itself, or if you were old school like I am and you would rather use the sliders, either way, you're going to get really great results from your images. And on top of that, this technology doesn't just work on regular layers, but it also works on smart layers, and it works on video, and it works on cartoons and illustrations. So we have a lot to get to. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. What better way than use my own headshot and my own face to morph all of my facial features and show you how this program works? We are going to be working on my headshot today, which was supplied by Moshe Zusman. Thank you so much for shooting that for me. And what I'd like to do is just show you the old way that we used to liquify facial features, and then I'm going to show you the new way and show you how easy it is. The first thing that I want to do is select my background layer and go ahead and duplicate that background layer by holding down Command or Control plus J. And we'll name this Liquify. For this example, I'm going to turn this Liquify layer into a smart object. I'm going to right-click on the right-hand portion of the layer in the Layers palette and choose to convert to Smart Object. Now let's take this image into Filter, Liquify. So now that we have our image inside of the Liquify dialog box, we have a few options. Let's just start with the old way that we would make adjustments to a face. For example, I've got this Sherk smirk going on, okay? That's what I call it because my kids have it too. But what I'd like to do is just make the smile a little bit more even on both sides. So I would use my forward warp tool. I'll just have a soft density and a soft pressure. I'll use the right bracket keys to make my brush a little bit bigger, and then I would pull it out just like this, okay? But if at any point you start to feel like your pressure and your density are too high, you really do run the risk of creating really bad retouching artifacts. So that is the original way that we would have made adjustments. I could also come in here and try and straighten the bridge of the nose if I wanted to, that kind of thing as well. But I just want to bring your attention to this handy dandy little tiny unassuming icon right here called the face tool. As soon as we click the face tool, you can see that there are new marks that actually show up as you hover your mouse over the image, okay? And this is what I was talking about with Photoshop Fix and its interchangeable uses. So you have all of the touch sensitive points, but then you also have this whole section over here called Face Aware Liquify. And if we go ahead and expand this group, you can see that we have quite a few sliders over here on the side. We have sliders for the eyes, eye size, eye height, eye width, eye tilt, eye distance. We have sliders for the nose. We have nose height and nose width. We also have a bunch of sliders for the mouth, smile, upper lip, lower lip, mouth width, mouth height, and also face shape, okay? So there are a lot of different options and opportunities to make modifications in this Face Aware Liquify section. So if you are kind of a newer user and you're familiar with the Photoshop Fix or the touch sensitive adjustments, you can use those specific access points to modify your eye. But the nice thing is that as you modify those specific sliders, these sliders also change. Okay, so you have a lot of different ways to get to the same result. Okay, so it's very easy. Whichever method you want to use, you can. Personally, for me, I find it easiest to use the sliders because I'm a little bit more old school. One newer feature that's been added recently to Face Aware Liquify is the option, it's actually in the view options down here, but you do have the ability to show face overlay. Now, if for any reason you feel like these access points on the face are a bit distracting and you can't really get your work done because you're constantly looking at these spots, you can turn off your show face overlay and that will remove them, but you still have the functionality of all the sliders over here. So I'm going to turn it back on. The other newer feature that I would like to highlight is the ability to lock the aspect ratio between, let's say, both eyes. So for example, if we wanted to take the eye size and increase the size of both eyes, if we lock this little icon in between the two sliders, as I increase the size on one, the size on the other one also increases, okay? So I'm going to unlock those two. But if you are one of my touch sensitive people, I just wanted to show you that the square icon, if you click on it, is going to adjust the overall size of the eye, while the circle icons are going to adjust the width or the height of the eye. And then out here, you can see that you do have the option for rotation. The rotation thing. So if you wanted to, you could tilt the eye up and down as well. Okay. One thing that does not have a touch point is going to be the eye distance that we see here. Okay. So if you wanted to do something with the eye distance, moving them back closer together and further apart, I told you this was going to be funny, guys. If you wanted to do that, you're going to have to do that on the slider specifically. Conversely, something that does not have a slider but does have a point is the option to move the eye. And the reason why this doesn't have a slider is because the action can be 365 degrees no matter what direction you want to take it, okay? So that's going to be some of the different functionalities for eyes specifically. So I'm just zeroing all of my sliders out. Let me zero out my eye distance. And then again, the relocation of the eye as well. That looks about right. So what other sliders do we have? What other modifications can we make? If you'd like to change the height of the nose, you have the opportunity to do that. You also can play around with the width of the nose if that's something that you want to do. But you also have the option to move the nose around 360 degrees, okay? Let me zero out these settings as well. And we also have a bunch of sliders for the mouth section. Smile, we could add a smile. Okay. What's really nice as well is that we have the modifications for the upper lip and the lower lip and the mouth width and the mouth height. When you're adding a smile to somebody's face, all of these sliders are going to come into play. It's not just sliding and increasing the smile slider, because most of the time that's not the only thing that's going to change. So just keep that in mind. The last section that I want to touch on is going to be the face shape section. And this is going to be the section that probably has the most practical application for the work that you're doing. I don't know about you, but as a headshot photographer, I get a lot of requests for thinning out the jawline and thinning out the face width as well, okay? And also the chin height. That can help a little bit as well, okay? So I'm just gonna zero out all of these settings. And what I wanna do is I wanna see if I can actually fool Photoshop into where it thinks that this face is not actually a face. So, and I want to see if the settings still work. So I'm going to use my forward warp tool and I'm going to increase the pressure and the density. And I'm just going to try and mess up the face to the point where it doesn't really look like a face anymore. If I go back to my face tool and I hover over, you can see that even though I have tried to change the location of that eye and make it to the point where it's not actually representative of a face, and the nose as well, I played around with the nose, you can see that the face-aware Liquify technology is actually still making adjustments to those actual areas, okay? So you can do the width of the face. You can change the size of the eye, bigger or smaller. You can still change the width of the eye and the height of the eye. So don't I just look fabulous, guys? So even when you do try and trick Photoshop into thinking that this might not be a face, it's still got you covered. So with that, let's move on to our next chapter. I kind of pride myself in being a good Photoshop teacher because I'm not only going to teach you the situations where everything goes right, but I also need to teach you the situations where nothing goes right at all and how to fix those situations. There's nothing more frustrating than watching a class and having something work perfectly on the screen that you're watching, and then you try it and it doesn't work, okay? I've been there personally, so I know how frustrating it is, okay? So with that being said, I want to teach you some of the troubleshooting things that may occur if you are using Photoshop and trying to use face-aware Liquify. The first is going to be the angle in which the face is in your photograph. Faces will register in face-aware Liquify up to a certain degree of tilt. Once they hit that degree of tilt, they're not going to register as a face in the program. So for example, a couple versions ago in Photoshop, the tilt aspect was cut off at 30% rotation. If a face was rotated more than 30%, it wasn't going to register as a face in face-aware Liquify. They have since increased that degree of tilt. And so now even a face that is tilted at 30 degrees is going to be registered. But I will show you a situation where it won't register right now. We have a beauty portrait here. And again, I never like to do any work on the background layer. So I'm going to hit Command or Control J to duplicate this layer. And then I'm actually going to hit Command or Control plus T to transform the layer that I'm working on. And I'm going to rotate this face pretty significantly. Now that I've done that, if I have my layer 1 selected in my layers palette, I can take my layer 1 into Filter, Liquify. And if I activate my face tool, you can see that I get a warning here. And the warning says there are no faces detected in this image. That's because this photo has been rotated to a point where the primary face detection software and the backup face detection software have both not registered a face in the image. Let's go ahead and press OK. Let's cancel out of this. And then we're just going to go back, Command or Control Z, to re-straighten this layer. So with the same layer selected, layer 1, I'm going to go back into Filter, Liquify, and immediately there, all of my face points show up. So even though this face is tilted a little bit, it's not tilted to the point where the face detection doesn't work. So just keep that in mind. The other really important setting that needs to be checked for Face-Aware Liquify to work is going to be in your graphics processor settings, and that's inside your preferences and performance section. Up at the top Photoshop menu, I'm going to check preferences, and then I'm going to choose performance. It's really important that we have Use Graphics Processor checked here. Otherwise, your face-aware technology is not going to work inside the Liquify dialog box. So I'm going to cancel out of this. If for any reason your Use Graphics Processor checkbox had been unchecked for some reason, you'll get this error message. The face tool requires hardware acceleration. Check the performance, preferences, and verify that Use Graphics Processor is enabled. So that's pretty plain English. And I think that over the last couple of years, Adobe has gotten quite good at translating their error messages into usable and understandable English. So that makes pretty good sense to me as to where to go. At least they're telling you, where to go at this point. There's one last problem that comes along with this face-aware Liquify technology, and that's going to be a face in profile. If you have a face that's the profile in your photograph, this technology is not going to work, unfortunately. But other than that, other than those small limitations, this technology is really going to revolutionize the way everybody uses Liquify from now on. So I'm really excited, and we'll move on to our next chapter. As professional photographers, there are plenty of times when we are presented with less than ideal situations, like when you're shooting a family portrait that just happens to fall in the middle of the baby's nap time. The baby is cranky because they haven't slept all day. The toddler's running around like a crazy person. I don't know about this poor family. This family looks pretty cute. But my family, I know that happens quite often, and it ends up in a explosion of just everything going wrong. So we're going to be there at some point in our career. So what if we had a tool that could really improve upon a specific image so that you wouldn't have to necessarily replace a bunch of faces with faces from other images that might look better? Sometimes it just takes a little bit of tweaking to make the client happy. And whenever that situation arises, you want to know that you have the skills to make that request a reality for that client. So let me show you what I mean. So here is our family portrait. You can see we've got the mom and we've got the dad and we've got the toddler and the baby, okay? But obviously we wish the baby was a little bit happier, and we'd also like to maybe just open the eyes of the father just a little bit. Now, these are requests that I have hypothetically received from the mom who's paying the check, who's writing the check for the specific photo shoot, right? So we want to make her happy. And I totally get it. What do people say? They say never work with dogs or babies because they're so, like, you never know what's going to happen with them. Well, in this case, sometimes you just have to do whatever's going to get you paid as a photographer. So again, the first thing that we're going to do is duplicate our background layer, Command or Control J with the background layer selected, and let's double click on the layer 1 and call this Liquify. And then again, just to protect ourselves, let's turn this into a smart object by right-clicking or control-clicking the right-hand side of the layer and choosing Convert to Smart Object. Now we can take this layer into our Filter Liquify dialog box. And so a couple of different things happen here. Since we are already in our face tool, since our face tool is already active, you can see that we do have the face overlays that have already illuminated on the faces. Now, one very frustrating thing about this is that we don't necessarily from first glance know which face is associated with which face in our list over here. Because if you look here, we have face 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? And that comes from the Select Face menu. If you go and click on one of these access points on the image, you can see that immediately our face 4 is auto-selected there. So it's going to pre-populate the face that you have started working on, which is really, really helpful. But let's go ahead and give this baby a little bit of a smile. So with face 4 selected, we're going to go and come down to our mouth sliders, and let's add a little bit of smile. Let's see, a little smiley. And part of the thing that I was talking about earlier when I was going through the overview of the different sliders is that when we smile, we don't just smile like this, right? There's different things that happen. The mouth rises, or the upper lip rises, and it also thins out because it's being stretched from side to side. So that's something that we want to replicate within our sliders. So let's make our upper lip and our lower lip a little bit thinner by modifying the upper lip and the lower lip sliders. We're making them a little bit smaller. And then the mouth width, we can also just improve a little bit on, widening it out just a little bit. And then the mouth height, we're going to improve on as well. Now, if we hit P on our keyboard, you can see the difference between an unhappy baby and a happy baby. Unhappy, happy. Unhappy, happy. So this is what I mean by the fact that just modifying the smile slider is not going to be enough when it comes to the anatomical background that goes along with replicating a smile from no smile at all. If you're trying to create that appearance, you're going to have to do a lot more modifications than just the smile slider. Let's move on and let's come up here to our dad. And this eye looks great, but we do want to just open this eye just a little bit more. So we're going to click and drag. And as soon as we click and start modifying a different face, you can see that our select face has switched from face 4 to face 2. So we are opening up the eye height of the right eye here so that you can see that this slider has been modified to what we have done right there. Okay, so if I go ahead and zoom out, we can hit our P key to preview the before and the after. And that baby looks a lot happier, doesn't he? And the dad's eye is a little bit more even sized. So we'll go ahead and press OK. So that looks good. That is a fix that would probably take, if we were doing it manually using the forward warp tool, it would probably take close to 30 minutes. But now that we're using the tools in the face-aware Liquify technology, it's really significantly cutting down on that time to make that fix and making you work smarter and not harder. Little known fact, there is a way to actually save presets for the Liquify dialog box. It's kind of like a preset, but you can basically save a setting or a change and apply it to another image. So if you've got a batch of images and you don't necessarily want to make the same adjustments time and time again, you can use a mesh to do that. I'm going to talk all about how you create a mesh, how you save it, and then how you load it in this chapter. But the mesh that we create is going to be adding a smile. Personally, because every single photo that I edit and change in the past has been a different face, I haven't really used mesh presets very much at all because there's no way that a nose is going to be in the identical position in multiple different images, or a smile is going to be the identical same position in a bunch of different images. It just doesn't happen in my career, right? Every single image that I do is different. So that being said, if you incorporate in the face-aware technology into creating your mesh, that's where the true beauty lies in this situation. Because all of a sudden, it's not just doing a silly mesh where it's just going to move this specific group of pixels over to the left or over to the right. Now it's going to take into account where the nose is in the image, where the mouth is in the image, and that kind of thing, where the eyes are in the image. And if you can tell it to widen the area where there's a smile in the photograph, then all of a sudden saving meshes and loading meshes is going to all of a sudden be applicable to you as a portrait photographer. So let me show you what I'm talking about. We have an image here of two faces, okay? So I'm just going to preview my guides really quickly. And you can see here that we have a sad face on the left side and a happy face on the right side. And so there are multiple changes that happen when a smile is added to a face. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the physiology behind a smile. And what do I mean by that? If you look at the eyes in the sad photo, you can see that they are much wider. But if we look at our smile photo, you can see that they're squinched up quite a bit, right? And then look at the lips in the serious face versus the non-serious face versus the smile face. The bottom lip pretty much stays in the same place. But if we look at the top lip, it significantly raises. And also look at the space in between the nose and the upper lip here, and the space in between the nose and the upper lip here. It's almost cut in half, okay? So if you're going to artificially add a smile to an image, you're not just going to pull the one smile slider left or right, right? There's all these other things that happen when a face smiles. So we can change all of those things, and then we can apply those and save them as a preset or a mesh. Okay, so let's do that next. So we have our image here, and I told you that this did work on illustrations as well, so I definitely want to show that and highlight that. We'll start with our background, and we'll just hit Command or Control J to duplicate it, and then we'll call this Add Smile. And let's take this into Liquify. For this specific example, I'm not going to turn it into a smart object. Filter, Liquify, and there's our face. Our face detection has been activated. And down here, we have our mesh options. So the first thing that we want to do, see mesh options, load mesh, save mesh, load last mesh. That's kind of like our preset section. So what's the first thing that we want to do? We want to squint the eyes a little bit and maybe rotate them both so that they look like they're smiling a little bit more. Okay, so we're going to rotate both eyes just a little bit. And then we might also take the eye height. Let's lock the two eyes together. And then let's start taking the eye height and just making it a little bit smaller. Okay. And I do want to highlight the fact that this eye over here has a hair cutting through the actual eye. And even though it has a hair there, the eye is still registered using the face detection software. So just keep that in mind. So for the eye height, let's go a little bit less heavy-handed, and let's just change the eye height by like -50%, okay? So we're changing both of the eye heights by -50, and then we've also tilted the two eyes outwards so that they look like they're smiling just a little bit more. If we just hit the P key, you can see our serious eyes and our smiley eyes. Serious eyes, smiley eyes. So we are starting to get the illusion of a smile. Now we can start modifying the actual mouth sliders to make this look a little bit more like a smile. Okay, so we're going to modify the smile itself, but then what are we also going to do? We're going to thin out the upper lip. And we're also going to thin out the bottom lip a little bit. And then maybe widen the mouth slightly. And then our mouth height, we're going to kind of pull it back a little bit to thin out those lips. So before and after. So we can see the smile both in the eyes and in the mouth as well. So that's looking really, really good to me. But now I want to save these options to a mesh so that I can apply them to another image. Okay, so if I've done all this work on creating this specific mesh, I want to be able to use it in the future. So that's when we come in and we choose to save this mesh. I'm going to go ahead and save this in my folder for this class and just press save. And that's going to save the mesh into my files. So now I can press OK, and you can see the before and the after of the smile. Okay, so we've added the smile. We were successful in adding the smile. Let's come to another image here. Okay, so now we have an image. Yes, it's still an illustration, but it's a different illustration. Let's go ahead and duplicate the background layer again, Command or Control J, and call this Add Smile. If we take this layer and we go back into our Filter Liquify dialog box, now what we can do is we can actually come down to our Load Mesh, load our mesh, and there we have our liquify.msh file, Liquify Mesh. So let's go ahead and open that mesh. And then immediately, we didn't have to change any of the sliders over here. They are all automatically inputted for us. And we were able to create a smile. So if I hit the P key to show you our before and our after, you can see she definitely looks happier now that we've added a smile to her. So now we can go ahead and press OK. All right, folks, there you go. I know that it's on illustrations, but the concepts still apply to faces and photographs as well, okay? So this is a really easy way for you to do the work once and then reap the benefits every time you use it in the future, okay? So you shouldn't have to manually create the illusion of a smile more than once if you go ahead and save it to your files so that you can use it in the future. Let's move on. As I mentioned in the introduction to this class, this technology is applicable to video as well. So there are a lot of things that can be done with this technology. Let me show you how we apply it to video. I've brought up just a really quick video in my Photoshop window, and I have activated my timeline window as well. If you're looking for your timeline window, you can always come up to your Windows menu and choose Timeline from the list. And let me just show you what the video looks like before I do any crazy modifications to it. Okay, simple, right? So in order to take this video into the Face-Aware Liquify dialog box and allow it to work, it has to be a smart object. So we're going to right-click or control-click on the right portion of our layer in our Layers palette, and we're going to choose Convert to Smart Object. That's going to change the video timeline from blue to purple in case anybody cares. But then, once it's a smart object, we can take it up to our filter menu, choose Liquify. Oh, this poor woman. And we can go ahead and just make one eye super tiny and maybe move it around a little bit. And the other eye we can make super large. Okay? All right. So there we go. Let's also move this eye down a little bit. Okay, once we do that, we can go ahead and press OK. And then the change is going to actually render through to every frame of our video. Okay? Now, in order to save time, what I've done is I've actually rendered this out on in both formats, the before and the after, okay? Because I don't want to sit here while this processes through every single frame of this video. So let me switch over to QuickTime. And here is our before. I'm going to play it once. And here is our after, okay? So I know that this is a really quick tip, and no face-aware Liquify has been used on this video broadcast today. Just want to set that out there for the record to make sure everything is straight. This is literally what you got to deal with, okay? Obviously, it can be done on video as well, so let's move on. If you photograph faces in any sort of capacity, you really need to know about Face-Aware Liquify and what it's capable of, okay? So that was the reason why I decided to devote all of this time to learning this software. It's this massive engine with tons and tons of capability, and it's totally hidden within the Liquify dialog box and nobody knows about it. So that's the reason why I wanted to share it with you today. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this class, and I hope you've learned something. And go apply this Face-Aware Liquify stuff to some of your video or your illustrations and see how it works.